Amen and amen. I thought I'd talk about the resurrection of Jesus today. That seemed appropriate, and I want us to think about the mystery of the resurrection, the mystery of the gospel, because it is a mystery. Now, the word mystery, of course, has a couple of different connotations. So when I talk about the mystery of the resurrection, I'm not thinking Scooby-Doo, right? And we gotta unmask somebody at the end. This is not a puzzle to be solved, right? That's not the kind of mystery that the resurrection is. It's not a problem to be figured out. It's not something that we got to put on our investigative kind of mindset and figure out how the details worked and how it was that a lifeless body came back to life and how it was that God exercised his supernatural sovereign dominion over life and death. Listen, we don't have the capacity to kind of figure out the things that God does because he's God, and newsflash, we're not. So when I talk about the resurrection as a mystery, I'm thinking more of the mystery of falling in love, the mystery of a first kiss, the mystery of beauty and joy that we experience in so many different areas and realms of our lives. And they are mysteries. You don't get to anatomically dissect and amputate and categorize the beauty and the joy of falling in love or a first kiss, but you're meant to experience the mystery. This morning, I want us to see that the beauty, the majesty, and the mystery of the resurrection is exactly that, a mystery that we are to experience. And that's a challenge for us because we are heirs of the Enlightenment. We've all been raised in kind of a cultural mindset and worldview that has at its base a worship of reason, a worship of the scientific method, a belief and a lifestyle that matches that belief, that if we just find the right experiment, if we find the right hypothesis and go through the method, that we can figure everything out. That there should be no mystery that the human mind cannot understand and conquer. And so we live in this world. We live in this world of unbelievable information, don't we? Like you have in your pocket right now a tiny little device, or in your purse, or whatever. You have access to unbelievable amounts of information. And that's a blessing sometimes. It's a curse almost all the time. This information overload is so unique, and we really don't know what it's doing to us or how we should respond and handle it. In 1982, there was a scientist with one of my all-time favorite names. His name was Buckminster Fuller. Yeah. Buckminster Fuller. What a great name. He proposed something that he called the knowledge doubling curve. So he did this study, and he said if we start at AD 1, right, like the death of Jesus, the resurrection, if we start at that as a starting point, how long would it take for all the knowledge of humanity to double? Right, so if we're starting, so all the knowledge that humanity had gained from whenever it started to AD 1, that's the base. And through his study and method, he said he discovered that it took approximately 1,500 years for that knowledge to double. So at year 1, we had this knowledge. By 1,500, it had doubled, which is impressive. But then he discovered that it only took 250 years for it to double again. So it went 1 to 1500, then it went 1500 to 1750, 250 years. And then it shortened by 100 years to 150. So by 1900, it had doubled yet again. And then that diminished to 45 years. So by 1945, World War II era, it had doubled once again. And then it went down to 20 years. Now, and it's incredibly difficult because of how fast information is being discovered and processed, and not just information, but false information and all sorts of... It's really, really difficult, but the best guess of scientists is that knowledge is doubling every year, if not less than a year. And, that's profound. Sometimes we're like the frog in the kettle. We're just surrounded by it so much that we don't see it or think about it. But the reality that we are living in, where information is constantly developing and bombarding us, and we have this unbelievable, unfettered access to it, it's doing something to us. In fact, you could look at it this way. We're actually being discipled by it. We're being shaped and formed by it. And the way that information overload is shaping us is not healthy. It's not good. Anxiety and stress are through the roof. I read a study this week that in the youngest upcoming generation in the United States, almost 50% of them have been diagnosed with anxiety and prescribed some sort of anxiety drug. 1 in 2. I can't really wrap my mind around that. Right? In our world, this stress, this anxiety, you've heard of the acronym FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. We always have to stay plugged in. We always have to know what's going on. We don't ever want to miss a trend. We don't ever want to miss that video, that meme, that moment that gets encapsulated and thrust upon us over and over again. We don't want to be that person that didn't see it. It creates all sort of challenges for us. So it creates decision fatigue. I don't know if you've felt that. I know I have. There's so much information that it actually paralyzes us from making a decision. There's some stores like that. I don't know. My wife will like to take me into Joann's Fabrics or Bed Bath and Beyond. And when I walk across the threshold of those stores, I feel it. There's too much. How many candle scents do we really need? How many bottles of lotion, ladies, do you really need? There's just and it's just overwhelming, and all I want to do is run. Too many choices. It leads to something called imposter syndrome. Our fields of work, our areas of expertise and knowledge, they're growing so fast that when you went to school, what you were taught is no longer what's needed for that job. And we can't keep up with the pace that it's developing, and yet we still feel like we have to have the mantle and the sense of competence and knowledge and security, so we pretend that we know more than what we do. It's changed the way that we communicate. Isn't that interesting? The more information we get, the less we actually communicate face to face. And then it's changed the tone of the way that we communicate because we're not communicating face to face and we're just keyboard warriors. Civility's gone out the window. We say things without thinking online that we would never say face to face. Right? There's the impact of the age and the environment that we live in and the constant barrage of information overload is damaging to the soul. It really is. It damages the soul. We become weary and skeptical. Isn't that ironic? I was really thinking about that this week, the irony. We have more information available to us than anyone has ever had in the history of history. And we are one of the most skeptical people to have ever lived in the history of history. And that's what happens with information. So you've lived through this, right? So you were told calcium's really, really good for you. Drink lots of milk. And then a new study came out and it said calcium's really, really bad for you. Stop drinking milk. And then another study comes out and says, no, it really was good for you. Get back on the milk. Oh, you know what? The sun is really, really dangerous. You got to stay away from the sun. If you're going to be outside, you got to wear a hat and you got to put on sunscreen or you're going to get cancer. And then we're told, you know what? Because you're always wearing a hat and sunscreen, now you've got vitamin D deficiency. It's what are you going to do, right? So we live in this constant barrage of information saying, no, you got to do this. And then somebody immediately says, no, you got to do this. And you got to do this. So we're left with this I don't know who's telling the truth anymore. And so we develop this posture of skepticism. Somebody throws out a fact. Oh, I'm not so sure. Because we've been down that road before. Remember, trust the science? But see, what has that done? What it's done is that we don't actually trust anything anymore. We don't trust our governments. We don't trust our religious institutions. We don't trust our legal system. We don't trust our law enforcement. We don't trust, we don't go down the line. We don't trust any of it anymore. And I, for the life of me, don't know how a culture survives, let alone thrives, without trust. This is a really big deal, y'all. It makes us skeptics, and it strips us of our capacity of wonder. It takes more and more and more and more to impress us. Right? It strips us from the capacity of wonder. And wonder, y'all, is really important. Jesus said it this way. He says, unless you become childlike, you can't enter into the kingdom of heaven. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven and the gospel of Jesus is an unbelievable mystery. It's not a problem to be solved. It's not something that we get to dissect and figure. No, it is a wonder to be experienced. If I say to you, hey, we're going to go to Disneyland. If I say that to a child, the child's like, yeah, right? And they start to shake and quiver, and they get super excited, and they start thinking about where they want to go and who they want to see and what it's going to be like. And so they get the joy of going to Disneyland, and they get the double joy of the excitement and expectation about going to Disneyland. It's all good. Now, I tell an adult, hey, you're going to go to Disneyland, and you start going, man, the price of gas in California. I don't want to pay taxes in California. Have you seen what the price of the tickets are? Has anybody checked the weather? What is that going to be like? Have you heard the stories about the food? And you start going through. And as we get older, our capacity for wonder gets demolished. C.S. Lewis once said, when we lose our sense of wonder, we actually lose our ability to appreciate life. As I think about Easter and I think about the resurrection, for those of us that have grown up in the church, those of us that have heard the message of Easter 10 times, 20 times, for some of you it feels like 1,000,000 times, there's a real danger, a real reality that we have to wrestle with, that it becomes commonplace. It becomes ordinary, it becomes assumed. We think we understand it. We lose the sense of wonder of it all. And church, that God would help us to stand in awe and amazement at what Jesus has done for us. See, because the gospel, the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, it's not simply a piece of information. It's not an idea to be dissected. It's not a problem to be figured out. The gospel is a declaration. It literally means good news. It's an announcement of something that has actually happened. You may not be able to figure out how it happened, but that doesn't matter because it happened, right? Like it actually happened. And it's of such a nature that it demands a response. Like all sorts of things happen in this world that I don't care about and that you don't care about. You know, there's a lot of things that happen in this world that you shouldn't care about, that you're wasting a lot of energy caring about right now. But the resurrection is in a class all by its own. The resurrection is a fact, an event, an actuality that has happened. Whether you understand it or not, it has happened, and it demands a response. I love the opening of John's epistle, 1 John. 1 John 1:1-4, he says, "That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked upon and have touched with our hands concerning the word of life." This is not some religious ideal. This is not a philosophical treatise. This is a real life incarnation, brute fact of reality. We heard him, we saw him, we touched him. The resurrection of Jesus is not just something to be believed in, it's something that's designed to be experienced. He says, we touch him concerning the word of life. Jesus isn't merely an idea. I don't know where the rest of that passage went. Corey, is it there? Go find verse 2 and 3 for me. It would make me so happy. Thank you. The life... I'm just self-editing right now. You should all be really proud of me right now. Okay, here we go. The life was made manifest, and we have seen it and testified to it and proclaimed to you the eternal life which was with the Father and was made manifest to us. That which we have seen and heard, we proclaim also to you. So hear what John's saying. It's like, we heard it, we saw him, we touched him, we were there, we experienced it. This was real. It happened. And now we're proclaiming it to you so that you too, now notice what he doesn't say, so that you too may believe it or have just simple, mere intellectual understanding of it. Or so that you could solve it. No, he says, listen, we proclaim it to you so that you may have fellowship with us, and indeed our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus the King. You hear what John is saying this morning? Like, Jesus is real. The resurrection is real. It happened in such a way that it has altered and changed reality. And so we have to adapt ourselves to that which has happened. So let's look at what happened in the Gospel of John. John chapter 20. Man, I love this text. It says, now on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene, one of the female followers of Jesus that is highlighted over and over again in the Gospels. She had this beautiful relationship and friendship with Jesus. She was there at the foot of the cross for his crucifixion. It's no surprise that as dawn begins to break on that first day of the week, that first Sunday morning of resurrection, that she's there at the tomb. It says she came to the tomb early while it was still dark. And she saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb, which was unexpected. So when they left, the stone had been rolled in front of the tomb, and 2 Roman centurions had been stationed there to guard against anything happening to the body of Jesus. Now when she comes in the dark of that early morning, she doesn't find the guards. She doesn't find the entrance blocked. The stone has been rolled away. So she runs. She runs. And you're gonna have to help me here, Corey. She runs. I don't know about you. When I was a kid, I didn't walk that much. I ran everywhere. Now I can't remember the last time I ran. Nobody scary enough has chased me, right, to the point where I want to, when do we run? We run when there's danger. We run when there's excitement. We run when walking just won't do, right? And so there's so much running in this text. She ran and went to get Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. That's such an interesting phrase. John writes this gospel. This is his testament of Jesus. But he doesn't ever name himself. He calls himself consistently the one who Jesus loved. Man, that in itself is a sermon. His identity has been shaped and impacted so much by his experience with Jesus that when he wants to tell you that which is most important about him, he says, oh yeah, you know who I am? I'm the one that Jesus loved. I'm the one that Jesus loved. Not an idea of love, an experience of love. So Simon Peter and the one whom Jesus loved said to them, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid them. So Mary is thinking about this like it's a Scooby-Doo mystery, right? We got to find the body. We got to figure this out. So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going towards the tomb. How were they going? Thank you for asking. Both of them were running together. Now, best guess by scholars, at this point in time, Peter was probably in his mid to late 30s, maybe early 40s. John would have been in his early to mid 20s. So it's not surprising that we get this. The other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. This is one of those verses in the Bible that makes me love it so much. Like you can imagine Peter reading John's letter and going, he put that in? Why'd you have to put in that you beat me to the tomb? Right? It's like, well, these were dudes that spent 3.5 years together. I don't know if you know how dudes treat each other. There's something about this. This is such a beautiful little detail. John gets there first. And then it says, stooping to look in, he doesn't see what he's expecting to see a body wrapped in linen with a shroud, a head covering placed. That's how they left Jesus when they put the stone in front of the tomb. That's what they're expecting to see. Instead, what does he see? He sees the linen cloths lying there. They're lying there, and it kind of indicates they're not just thrown and strewn around. They're folded up. They're wrapped up. They're lying there. They're no longer needed. You don't need burial wraps for a man that's alive, right? So Simon Peter comes, huffing and puffing, and elbows John out of the way. It does what Peter does, jumps in first, right? Peter came following him and went into the tomb. And he saw the linen cloths lying there, and he saw the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Again, these little details matter. Right? Jesus' defeat of death was not chaotic, but orderly. Right? Like something happened to Jesus that made the cloths and the face cloth unnecessary. And when he comes back from the dead, they get rolled up and they get put in their place. Because something's happened. Something's happened that changes everything. It says, then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, got to get that back in there, also went in. And then I love this. And he saw and he believed. He saw and he believed. Because verse 9 says, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. This is one of the things that, as we read through the Gospels, the closer they get to the crucifixion, the closer they get to Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection, the more Jesus teaches his disciples that it's going to happen. And they don't want to hear it. That's not the Messiah that they want him to be. It's not the action that they have drawn up for him to do. Jesus keeps telling them, I'm going to go, I'm going to be betrayed, I'm going to die. Peter actually rebukes him and gets rebuked by Jesus and called Satan because of it. Like they just don't want to see it. But now you see in that moment, John looks in the empty tomb. He sees the cloths rolled up. He sees the face cloth folded and gently put on the shelf. And he remembers and he sees and he, you know what it doesn't say? It doesn't say he understands. Oh, I know what happened here. I know how God raised him from the dead. I know how that worked. I know how God's sovereign supernatural ability took dead cells and reanimated that. No, he doesn't understand. But you know what it does say? It says he believed. He saw and he believed. What Jesus said he was going to do, he did. He didn't understand all of it. How could he understand something that he didn't experience? But he saw it and he believed. The mystery is not something that demands us to unravel it. The mystery is something that we're called to embrace. Then the disciples went back to their homes. So they're like, what do we do now? Let's go tell everybody else. So they leave. But Mary's standing there. And she doesn't leave. And this description, Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. Her heart's broken. She loved Jesus. She had so much hope. Jesus had done so much for her. And then to witness what she witnessed, to witness Judas betraying Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, to witness all of the disciples scattering, leaving him alone, to stand with Mary, Jesus' mother, at the foot of the cross while she watched her son suffer and die. Mary's hearts have been broken. Her dreams have been broken. Her relationships have been, everything's been broken. And so she stands outside the tomb weeping. And as she wept, she stooped to look into the tomb. This text is just so vibrant to me. I can understand it. Like she's standing there. John and Peter have come in. They've looked. They must have been exclaiming. They take off. She's like, her heart's been broken. She wants to look, but she doesn't want to look. She's got to stand there for a while. So finally, she stoops and looks in, and she sees two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had lain, one at the head and one at the foot. Oh, there's a lot of symbolism there. If we wanted to nerd out on theology and talk about the Ark of the Covenant and the cherubim on the ends of the mercy seat, it's all there. But for Mary, here we are with Mary. Her heart's broken because she watched Jesus die. And now as she looks in, she sees these two divine beings hanging out in a tomb. One where the foot was, one where the head was, and they say to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" That sounds non-PC, doesn't it? Like we just generally don't talk to somebody and say, "Hey, woman." That doesn't go over so well. This is not rudeness. The divine beings here, the angels are not like dissing her. This is just a way in their language to address someone, right? Woman, why are you weeping? Which, when you've had your heart broken and somebody says to you, why are you weeping? How does that make you feel? Right? It makes me angry just thinking about it. It's almost a crazy thought. What do you mean, why am I weeping? How do I even answer that? Why am I weeping? And so she just says to them, they've taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. So she's still not put together that Jesus has risen from the dead. She's still thinking, Scooby-Doo mystery, I got to find his body. And having said this, she turns around and she sees Jesus standing, which is not something that a lot of dead guys do. Because she'd seen him die. But now he's standing in the garden. Once again, if we want to nerd out a little bit here, where does the story start? In a garden. Where's the story get broken? In a garden. When's the story get put back together? Oh my goodness, shockingly, in a garden. When she looks at Jesus, she doesn't know that it was Jesus. And Jesus says to her, woman, why are you weeping? Who are you seeking? And supposing him to be the gardener, which I think she was absolutely right. He is the gardener. He is the one that did what Adam was supposed to do in the garden. He is the one that is serving as the righteous priest and king and prophet of God. He is the true Imago Dei who is living out our intended divine destiny and calling. She thinks he's the gardener, though, and she says to him, Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. Now, this is where the story just gets so fabulous to me. Because Jesus says to her one word. Just calls her by her name. Mary. When she hears Jesus call her by her name, she turns to him and cries out to him in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. Recognition comes, right? So she's been spending her time asking everybody, where did they take the body? Where did they take the body? Now, Jesus calls her name, and what does she do? She turns to him. She turns to him. Can I suggest to you this morning that that's a paradigm for us? When Jesus calls your name, turn to him. Let me just say it again. When Jesus calls your name, you don't got to figure it out. You don't got to map it out. You don't got to diagram it. You don't got to answer it or solve it like it's a problem or a puzzle or a mystery. When Jesus calls your name, the real life, living, resurrected person, God made flesh, calls your name, what you do is what Mary did. You turn to him and you acknowledge him as he is. You're never going to understand him fully. You're never going to understand him completely. I don't care how many bad funerals you've been to. I've been to a lot. Well-meaning preachers stand up and say, oh, you know what? Now they know everything. Now all those questions they've had, they've all been answered. And that's just bogus. It's a nice thought. It's a nice sentiment. Not biblical. Not in the least. You're not going to become God. You're not going to become all-knowing. You're not going to become all-present. You're going to be resurrected. You're going to be replacing the corruptible with the incorruptible. You're going to become more than what you are now, but you're not going to become God. And I think one of the beauties of heaven is not that I'll know everything. One of the beauties of the everlasting kingdom is that I will get to continue to learn and grow and discover the glories and the beauties of God day after day after day after day forever. When Jesus calls your name, see, we're programmed and we've been discipled in this information age and overload to be weary skeptics. Jesus calls your name. What do you want? What do you want from me? Is that really Jesus? Is that making that up? What if it's not Jesus? What if it is Jesus and he asks me to do something that I don't want to do? We want to stand in judgment. We want to tell Jesus how to be Jesus. Let me just say it again. When Jesus calls your name, the only proper response is to turn to him and acknowledge him as the one that is teacher, as the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. Turning to him, believing in him, doesn't mean complete understanding. It doesn't mean figuring it all out. It does mean trusting. I love Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton said this. He said, listen to this. The moment you have a religion in which there is no mystery, look out. That religion has been manufactured. Of course it has. Like if you've got a religious belief, if you've got a religious practice, if you've got a religious experience that you can connect all the dots, that you can diagram and illustrate, and you can know it inside and out, that is not a religion that God has created. That's a religion that you have created. We're made in God's image. He's not made in ours. His ways are not our ways. There's always going to be a beautiful mystery about who God is. We're not called to figure it out. We're called to embrace it. You say, yeah, I get that, but it's hard. I'm struck by the words of Mark 9:24. A prayer that I pray, if not daily, almost every day. I believe, Lord. Help my unbelief. See it, Lord. I see you. I hear you. I want to figure you out. This desire to be in control. This desire to understand. The desire to be right and have the right information puts us in a position where we're not coming to Jesus as the one who is the way, the truth, and the life, the one who is the life and the resurrection, the one who is the good shepherd, the one who is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. It has us coming to him in judgment over him. Let me analyze with my logic. Let me test with my experience. Let me hold you under my microscope of truth. See, the resurrection is so radically beyond the scientific method. Of course it is. The idea that science and logic and reason can understand everything is inherently broken. Because those are things that operate within only one realm of existence. Science is amazing. I love it. I'm not anti-science in the least. I love it in the material realm. To think that science has something to offer in the divine immaterial realm is ridiculous from the get-go. So when we're dealing with the resurrection, when we're dealing with the supernatural entering into the natural, the divine meeting the ordinary, it's not something we puzzle out. It's something we grab a hold of. we enter into the mystery. The first witnesses of the resurrection didn't understand how it happened. They didn't have theological explanations or scientific theories. What they had was an encounter with the risen Christ who called their names. And that changed everything. In our information-saturated world where explanations abound but meaning seems scarce, the resurrection offers something. The resurrection offers something no algorithm or search engine can provide: the assurance that death doesn't have the final word. When Jesus called Mary's name in the garden, he didn't offer a theological treatise. He offered her himself. And today he offers himself to you. Not answers to all your questions. Wouldn't that be nice? But he offers himself and his presence in the midst of them. The resurrection means that even when we don't understand, God is at work bringing life out of death. Can I say that again, y'all? The resurrection screams to us that exactly when we don't understand what's going on, in the silence and darkness of the tomb, God is at work bringing life out of death, hope out of despair, meaning out of confusion. It means that the story of your life, with all its questions, all your doubts, all your struggles, is held within a larger story that ends, and they all lived happily ever after, in restoration and joy. So this Easter, may you hear Christ calling your name. He's calling. He's calling. Creation itself is screaming of the glory of God. The Spirit is bearing witness through the word of revelation, through the people that God has rescued and brought unto himself. Jesus is calling. And he's calling your name. May you find the courage to turn to him, not because you have it all figured out, but because the one who has conquered death is worthy of your trust. He's worthy of your trust. If he conquered death, why would we not trust him with the lesser things? In him, in Jesus, we find not just information, but transformation. Not mere facts, but fellowship. Not just an idea, but an invitation to the kingdom of life. Jesus is calling. For some of you, he might be calling you to trust him for the first time. Some of you, he might be calling you to trust him again. Some of you, he might be calling you this morning out of the imprisonment and enslavement of your sins. Some of you, he's going to call out of your sorrow so that he can give you a headdress of joy. Some of you, he wants to call out of the prisons you've imprisoned yourself in to the freedom that only Christ has given. The beauty of Jesus is that he can call to all of us by name in exactly what it is that we need. So may we hear the voice of Jesus calling us together this morning. And like Mary, may we turn to him and acknowledge him as what he is, the teacher, the one who shows us the way. Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.